Well, welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump back into where we left off in our last episode. We were discussing the 5 love language book.
And knowing your spouse.
Knowing your spouse and knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Because not only do I want to know my spouse's love language, I want to know my own.
Yeah.
Partially so I can help my spouse know how to help me feel loved. It's not just on their shoulders, but how do I help you love me and you help me love you?
Yes.
Rather than assuming they should just know, right? So we've talked about the first 3. Today we're going to talk about the final 2 love languages, which would be gifts and touch. And so since this in particular love language, gifts, would probably rank as one of your highest.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and share a bit
So
about
like I said, so in the previous episode, we talked about words of affirmation.
Yeah.
We talked about quality time, and we talked about acts of service. And I said in the previous episode that I am like 4 out of the 5 of these love languages rank very high for me, acts of service not being one of them, and acts of service being your highest, and the other 4 not being as high for you.
And this one's really difficult because it involves money.
Yeah, well,
sometimes.
It's not just money, it's gifts, which does not even rank for you, which is really funny because even though I'm a words of affirmation girl and a quality time girl, gifts is really high on my list.
Yes, it is.
So this has been an interesting one for us in our marriage because when gifts are one of your biggest love languages, then I feel love, I receive love, and I often give love through gifts.
Yeah.
Because if you're a gifts person, you most likely feel that love because somebody took the time to think of you throughout the day or to go purchase something, and they used their resources, which should be finances, to invest in you in something that they feel would bless you or make you happy over something else. So I know that's been a challenge. They put thought into it, but then they also chose to use their money or resources to invest in that. And it was, so then you're a priority.
So let's be honest about that, because we know, and we don't want to assume all gifts have to have money involved.
Right.
And a child makes you a drawing. A husband can write a poem, or a wife can, make something simple that doesn't have to cost a lot. And it does touch you deeply.
Very much.
But
if you have the resources.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, but we don't talk often that there is something about actually spending money sometimes. And
or often.
or often.
Yes, because then because I feel valuable. Like you took something, God loves our offerings, right? Yeah. And it's an act of worship to the Lord as well. And so when you take of your resources and you invest them in something to bless me or to give a gift, then I feel like I'm valuable. I'm important enough for you to invest your resources in. And I receive love very much that way. And you've done that a couple of times. I remember in our marriage, it was really funny because early on, I think we were walking through a grocery store one day, and I love flowers. Ladies out there, not everybody loves flowers, but I love flowers. And I had just wanted some flowers. And girls, it's funny because I was thinking that I was communicating clearly to you about what I wanted, but you were just not getting it that day at all. And it was funny, we were walking into a grocery store and I saw some flowers. And so I said to you, oh, those flowers are beautiful. And you agreed with me.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, they are.
Yeah, you said they're beautiful. But every girl listening to this podcast right now knows exactly what I was doing, that I was clearly communicating in the female language of please buy me flowers because I commented on how pretty they were.
I said they were beautiful.
Yes, you agreed with me that they were beautiful, but it went right over your head. And so I was getting frustrated. So I decided to take it a little step further. And I was like, oh yeah, such and such got beautiful flowers the other day. And you were like, oh, did they?
That's awesome.
That's nice.
Yeah, good
You're
for them.
just totally oblivious to what I was saying, which was so funny. Now it was funny. Then it wasn't funny. And so finally I looked at you. I think one more time I said, oh, I even have a beautiful vase that those flowers would look good in. And you said to me, yes, it would, but kept walking and didn't buy the flowers. It was totally oblivious to you. Because investing or gifts were just not on the radar to you. This was not a way that you
spending money
were
on something like that or whatever.
Yeah, because it wasn't on your radar. And why would you do that? Because it's not going to make me feel loved. It wasn't necessary.
Or I could say, oh, they're going to die.
Yeah, they're not going to be around. This is like, something that would be a waste. And finally, I had to look at you and be like, I want flowers.
I think you actually grabbed me by the shoulders, face to face, and said, "Buy me flowers." And I was like, "Oh, why didn't you
Why
ask me
didn't
for
you just say
flowers?
so
Why
in
didn't
the
you say
first
so?"
place? Yeah. Anyway, which was funny, but I had to get to that point of clearly communicating, which is a whole nother conversation about communication. But it was a love language that was important to me.
Yeah.
But then you've been so good, even over the years, to learn to speak that to
Yeah.
where you'll be out and about and spontaneously. It's not always expensive, although the Lord has moved on you a couple times to do some things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the time, throughout marriage, most of the time it can be, you have a certain dark chocolate peanut butter cup that you like, and I
do.
can bring that home. Or, like you said, of flowers, here. And you don't even ask for like the big, super expensive flowers. It can be the grocery store $19.99 flower.
I mean, the expensive flowers are nice too.
Every once in a while. I don't want
Yeah.
to take it away. I don't take it away. No, but it's the majority that you feel just thought of. It's just any little thing that meant I took time. I
Yeah,
thought of
out of your
something.
day.
I brought something home, or I thought of you and brought you something. But there is something about extravagant gift or an occasional something that it costs more. And yes, there were, I think, twice in our marriage that I remember sometimes money can have a strong hold on me. It just does. I don't like to part with it. And then I had 4 kids, and I don't have a choice.
You're
It's like
partying with
just
it all
flows.
the time.
But I think that's a fear thing. I think it's fear of not having enough or running out or whatever. And there were 2 times where the Bible says, "Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil by doing good." And twice I remember the Lord saying, you need to buy Maria a specific gift. And those gifts were a few $100s a piece, or $1,000-something in one time. And I was like, by faith, Lord, I'll do that. And it may seem to some wasteful, but it doesn't matter what it seems to anybody else. Like, you don't worry about what other people think. But to me, it was like, my marriage is worth this, and I don't want that fear to control our marriage. And so I'm buying these because I love my wife, and I want her to know I love her and she's valuable to me. But also, I don't want fear to start dominating my marriage or our marriage,
Yeah.
And so there are reasons that God would challenge us, I think. And even in church, like, I love that you brought that conversation about God wants our offerings, right?
Right.
He wants your tithes, but he also wants your offerings. And there's times he's going to ask you to do something bigger because he's stretching your faith. He's about to create something, that money is not just about the money. It's about something that he's doing, in your
Yeah.
life. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So gifts are a love language, and it's something that we can cultivate, and something that, some of us may have. The other thing is if your spouse isn't a gifts person and you're trying to buy them things, you're out and
True.
about, and they may not be receiving love again, but you are a gifts person and you're constantly trying to give love that
Yeah.
way. These are just little examples to
Yeah.
just continue to be self-aware
Yeah.
and to know your spouse.
Well, and being self-aware too, then you don't want to, like, say something negative to your spouse for bringing you a gift. Like, why would you waste your money on that?
Right.
I mean, that would crush your heart because you were excited to bring me something, even though it wasn't necessarily my main love language. I have learned to see it as you talking to me, you sharing, and I would hate to crush your spirit, in that. But again, layer it into your children, right? Not just into your spouse. You wouldn't
have
do that with
kids
them.
that
Where
love
your
gifts.
kid will make you, yeah. But your kid could make you something like out of dirt. Here's a mud pie, Dad. And I'm like, well, what do I need that for? What a waste of time. It's not worth anything. Or what? And it's like, if you look at it that way, like, why would I crush my kid, in that? You want to encourage that because that means something to them, and that means something to you.
It's powerful.
It's that great illustration between us as well. Well, this final love language is touch. Can I have your hand?
Yes.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. All right. So, and we want to talk today about touch, and we're going to specifically talk about non-sexual touch. Hugging, holding hands, putting your arm around them, showing affection in public. Like, that's a big deal, not like weird PDAs or anything, but like the sense of, I'm proud to be walking next to you, that we're together, that holding your hand is like showing the world that these two, they have something between them, your kids watching mom and dad touch. Again, if if it's like awkward for your kids to see you give your spouse a kiss or a hug or to hold hands or something, we're doing a lot in our homes. Like we're also
Yeah.
raising them on what's appropriate and expected. And if mom and dad don't ever touch, I mean, they know they touched at least once. They're here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like not common, and it shouldn't be that way because you want them to be able to express their emotions, to one another and to feel like it's a safe place and it's healthy. But I think it also helps your children to know that the marriage is healthy, and not on the verge of breaking down, because touch communicates closeness. Touch communicates an intimacy, a level of intimacy. And if couples are holding hands often, their arms around each other often, hugging often, then the battles they're fighting are not typically the big ones, right? Because there's a sense of freedom to be close. So all of the walls, and when people stop touching, there's a problem, right? It could be hurt. It could be, I don't trust that person anymore. It could be offense and stuff going on. And so a child at home can even feel unsafe. Like, I haven't seen my mom and dad, touch each other in years,
Yeah.
but when they see them consistently embrace or want to be close to each other, then I believe it gives them a sense of security. And it is.
Yeah, touch is a very important part of marriage in general.
Yeah.
But it is also a love language.
Yeah.
So it is a way that people, to receive that love, if your spouse is coming up and putting their arm around you or holding your hand or giving you a little like love pat. There's times you come up to me all the time and have your arm around me, or you're just holding me close or whatever. That's a way that I know that you give love, but I can receive love as well. And it's important to know if you are a touch person or if your spouse is a touch person, so that you can be intentional about receiving that love. If you are not naturally a touch person, but you married somebody who is, then receiving that, pausing and receiving that love when it comes your way is a big deal. But then, like we have a child who is not a touch person.
Yeah, I just went there.
Yeah. And they're only ready, like they'll come into the kitchen and throw their arms open, and when that happens,
once a week,
right? Then we know, okay, now is the time for the hug, right? Because they're
they'll
ready
open their
for it.
arms, like, all right, hug me.
But
Go
there
ahead.
have been times
I
that
will
I've
let you
gone up
hug
to
me.
this one, and I'm like, no, I'm hugging you right now, whether you want to or not, and they just put up with it because they understand that this is a love language. So it's kind of funny. So you have to train yourself and teach yourself, and know yourself.
Yeah, and again, I'm just thinking about conversations I've had through church and people, and where, a guy will look at me and say, well, my dad never embraced my mom. I never saw it. It wasn't modeled in my home. And
Well, your wife isn't your mom.
Exactly. Your wife is not your mom. And do you want that marriage? Or do you want more? You can become a touch person. And you may not realize how much it does impact you, and you enjoy it. You begin to reach for your spouse's hand. It becomes first nature. You begin to hold them close, and embrace them, even in times when times are tough. Like if the only time your spouse ever feels your embrace is like, maybe your parents pass away or a real difficult time, you want to make sure you feel like a safe place, and that's created consistently, right? Not just once a lifetime, or just whatever. But this also will lead into a sexual, kind of part of our conversation. And I'm going to talk because I'm a guy. You can talk about the ladies if you'd like, but if a guy only touches his wife or only approaches her when he wants to have sex, right? So the only time he gives her a kiss, she's like, okay, he wants to have sex, or only time he brings her close is when he's excited or whatever. And then when they're finished having sex, he never touches her again. Yeah. Right? Like that becomes really offensive. It becomes almost like there's no connection until you want sex. And non-sexual touch is why we wanted to focus on it. Is not a waste of time. It's like an investment into your unit, your intimacy. And so those days of holding hands and those times of just giving a hug and not wanting anything else afterwards, right? Just to be held or to show love. Oftentimes it even opens your spouse up to saying, I would love to be even closer than this, right? But you don't want to get into a position where the only time you approach your wife is just to have sex with her. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, touch is a love language. So it's something non-sexual touch is a love language.
So understanding how you give and receive love, and if touch is one of them, then it has to be not just connected to sex.
Yeah.
It has to be something that we're speaking. And I am a touch person. You are too. And I think we've grown over the years. I've grown, like you've grown, we've both grown in ways to speak that, so that, consistently, because I think there was a season even in our marriage where like I thought that I had this misconception that you were coming up and giving me a hug because it wanted to lead to something, which maybe it did, but even understanding that was you showing me that you love me. And now you've been amazing at speaking that love language all the time. So it's not just when, there are some hopeful expectations on the other end of that.
Yeah.
But again, it is a love language.
And a good way to help not prove it, but to kind of see that again is this is human interaction. So even babies need touch. Babies need to be held, to feel loved, to feel close. They don't know how to use words yet. They have no idea
And that
what
sticks with
acts
us as
of
we grow
service
up.
are. Right. And so all of us, though we realize it or believe it or not, there is this emotion, this security, this relationship that's formed through touch.
There's a reason many of us want a hug, when we're going through something or when we're celebrating something. It's because it's a way to communicate a love and affection for people, even in a non-sexual way.
And let's go back to the judgmentalness. If a person is more of a less touch-driven and more work-driven, that they can feel like when their spouse is saying, I just need to be held, or I just want a hug, that it's like, fine, I'll give you a hug, almost like done with an attitude, or why do they need this? They should just suck it up or whatever. But again, that's like telling, a child they shouldn't need to be held, or telling a plant you shouldn't need that. Right. Which was really the final illustration to kind of help bring all this together is if you could imagine with me, those of you watching or driving your cars, if you could imagine with me, or maybe you're working out on the treadmill,
wherever you are,
like I had pots of plants up here, and I had one plant in the center, and that plant was marriage. It was your marriage.
It represented
your marriage. It could also represent your husband, or it could represent your wife. So it can represent whatever we're talking about in a moment. And then let's say I added another cup. Can I borrow your cup there for a minute? So I added another cup, okay? And if I had more cups that I added along the way, because that often is what happens. So this first plant, it needs sunlight, it needs soil, it needs water, it needs nourishment. It has certain needs. It has certain things to keep it healthy. All marriages have certain things, certain needs. It could be the love languages. It needs quality time. It needs words of affirmation. It needs all that. And those needs, it could be touch. It could have all kinds of needs that a marriage needs. And the fact that it has those needs doesn't make it good or bad, right or wrong.
Just makes it a plant.
It makes it a plant. And I can't look at that plant and say, why do you want water? That you shouldn't want that water. It was the way God made it to work and to function.
That's
or
really
to say that marriage needs time. And you're like, why does it need so much time? That's so frustrating. Then you're mad at God who made that plant, because that plant was made to need certain things for it to be healthy, right?
Yeah.
Well, same thing would be with your wife. Your wife has certain needs. She needs whatever these love languages might be, or some other additional things. She has certain things that God wired her up that are required for her to be the healthy version of herself.
That's good. Yeah.
And then a husband, he has certain needs, and it could be the 5 love languages again. It could be other things that make him feel strong and make him feel healthy. And a wife can't look at her husband and say, why do you have that need? That bothers me that you have that need. If it's a God-given need, if it's in the design of the Creator, then it shouldn't be something that we resent because your husband has that need.
Right.
He has a need for sex. Well, he shouldn't have that need. That's a perversion. Well, your wife actually has a need for intimacy and sex as well,
yes.
non-sexual touch and sexual touch.
Yes.
And it's not a deficiency in him because he has that need. though we might say, why should he have that need?
Because God created us with that.
And that's what I want to say is like, if you look at that first plan of marriage, spouse, wife, husband, that they have certain specific needs, and the need for those things doesn't make them weak, doesn't make them broken, and us withholding those things
We'll kill it.
will kill it, and thinking they should be able to be healthy without me giving it to it. And that's not true. Just like that plant should be healthy without me giving it water. Like that's not going to happen. I don't care what we want or what our opinion is. You have to give the plant what it needs in order for it to be healthy. But then the reason I brought another cup in is because now you have children, or you have another plant that has other needs and responsibilities. And what happens sometimes in marriage is we could have 4 or 5 of these cups. I could have 5, 6 cups lined up here.
Representing different things like your job or church life,
your church life,
all that stuff.
Your family, your extended family,
Yep.
right? You have all these responsibilities that get added to your marriage. Now, here's my question. The fact that you added another plant, does it change the needs of the first plant? Does it mean like, because I have the responsibility of a second plant, does that give me the excuse now to not give the first plant its basic needs, its design needs? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very good.
See, what happens sometimes, people are like, well, I can't give my marriage time right now because I have kids. The babies take it, or I can't give my marriage water right now because I got to give the water to the kids. And if you do that, then you're going to end up killing the marriage or killing your spouse in one way, shape, or form, because it's designed to need those things. And God has to and will give you expanded capacity to be able to balance. Now, you may have to schedule things differently.
In different seasons. You do it differently.
Yeah, do it differently. So I acknowledge all of that. But your marriage, if it's going to be healthy, is still always going to require the basic needs. It's your spouse to be healthy will always require certain basic needs. And you can't use the excuse that I can't give quality time, or I can't give words of affirmation, or I can't give, gifts or whatever, touch, because I'm so busy with the kids. Or I got a job, and now my job gets all of my time.
Yes.
My job gets all of my work, 'cause I'm too tired to go home and serve my spouse and take care of my spouse because I worked for my job. You don't have that option. You have to be able to expand, and God gives you the ability to do it. And again, it's a balancing act, and there are certain seasons, like when you have babies and they take so much time, that season will pass and you will be able to, have some privacy again, one day. But what I'm trying to communicate is the needs of the plant, the needs of the marriage, the needs of the spouse, they're always going to be there regardless of how many responsibilities are added, and they will be added. Life grows. And you can't look at your spouse or the marriage as it should sustain itself without it because I don't have the capacity anymore. That's just not fair.
Right. Well, and this is where the intentional seed sowing and looking down the road to the kind of rocking chairs, that where do you want to be sitting in those seats? Where do you want to be 50 years down the road and planning towards that? If you're not sowing into that marriage, then it's going to wither up if you're not providing it the sunlight, if you're not giving it the water, the nutrients, the tension, even the pruning. Some of the plants you have to prune, you have to do different things to it to make sure that it will thrive and survive. And I just want to hit that thing on seasons, because different seasons of life and stages of life require different things. But watching over the years, we have more time, or I don't want to say more time now, but we have the capacity, a little bit different to do date nights and things like that different now. But when the kids were young, it took intentionality. When we were first married and we didn't have kids, we could do date night whenever we wanted. We had, we worked, but then the rest of our time was ours. And then we added kids, another plant in. And so then having to find time for us, we had to get very intentional in scheduling and getting babysitters and making it a priority, and being okay with letting the kids be with babysitters. Some people don't want to do that. That was a shift to allow that to happen.
That doesn't make you a bad parent.
You're not a bad parent. You're creating a stable marriage. But just doing those things to be intentional. And then there's different stages and seasons of life, but making sure that you're taking care of that plant and providing all the needs. And all the other things require things to thrive and survive, and they're not bad things. Like your church, involvement requires certain things, but that's how God designed us to be part of the body of Christ. So all of those things will take care of things, but if God's bringing those into your life, that means that he will, like you said, give you the capacity, and there's a strategy and there's a way to do it.
Yeah, the big lesson in that is pay attention. Pay attention to each of those plants, and are they getting the needs met? Because sometimes we're just like so into our job, so into the kids, and it's just like we neglect.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to neglect. This whole series is about marriage. And we do want to have a long-term, lasting, healthy marriage. And there's not this thing where I can just neglect the nutrition of the plant and it's just going to be healthy because I want it to be, right?
Yeah.
Just like your body. Like you neglect your body long enough, it's going to break down. And the plant isn't broken. It isn't wrong because it has specific needs that have to be met in this way God designed it.
Which goes back to the 5 love languages, that your spouse, like understanding what you need, how you give and receive love, and understanding your spouse, how they give and receive love, how God has uniquely wired them, and what uniquely in your marriage, it's not something that can be, it's not optional.
Yeah.
It's
just
not
like
optional.
that plant. It's a vital part. It's a part of the process. It's needed. Part of the Creator's design.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you look at it that way, then you don't look at it like you're accommodating or like, fine, I'll do it. You're like, no, this is how God wired it up. He knows best.
And I'll tell you, on this side, it's so exciting. I'm so grateful to be 25 years into our marriage, because all of these lessons that we learned, and we, like, even going back to we haven't been perfect, but we've said yes to the Lord, right? Yeah. And we've allowed him to work on us. Like, I'm not the same person I was when we got married 25 years ago. I have grown. I've said yes to the Lord so much. And it's not easy to always do that. We've had to learn each other. We've had to be willing to prefer one another, which we talk about all of those things coming up. But the marriage that we have now on this end is incredible. And I'm so thankful to God for that. Yeah. And for a spouse who's willing to listen to understand me and to know me. And I love the journey of going on to get to know you.
And in closing on this session, I was thinking about Kylie, our daughter, being in college now. We have 3 more at home. They'll soon be on their journey.
Not far from it.
And if we did neglect the original marriage plant, saying, no, we got to just only focus on the kids right now, and we didn't ever put anything in, at some point, your children are going to move on. They're going to, have different lives and families of their own. And then you're going to come back and you see that withered up plant there. And the hope is that because you've been nurturing all of those things, that when they grow into something else, that you have something still healthy, that's been there, and that you're not surprised saying, wow, the years of neglect, it showed up here. It will show up. And we just want to make sure that we're being faithful. Remember, a man's harvest in life, or a person's harvest in life, is based on the seeds that they sow. And so we want to sow the good seeds for that preferred future. So good session. Awesome. Thank you everyone for watching again. And we look forward to our future episodes.